Hello, and you're welcome along to part two of our preview of the All-Ireland semi-final between Mayo and Tyrone that takes place on Saturday. I'm joined now by two men who've been heavily involved in our club in the past couple of years. First man is one man who'll never have to buy a pint in Ballintubber. He guided us to two senior county title victories in the 3 years that he was manager, which is a good record in any man's language. Kevin Johnson. And second of all, we have Ruaidhri Hallinan, who's been a player with the club for many years and was also a selector on the club when Kevin was in charge, and has also been a performance analyst with the Mayo senior squad. So first of all, Kevin, how's life in your new management job?
Thanks a million, Oshin. Enjoying it now. I took up a new role there with and Sligo there just before Christmas, and look, I looked at it as a new challenge. Look, I've embraced it now, and things are going quite well. Obviously, lockdown came again, and we didn't get really going until May, so there was, it was very difficult as a new manager to try to come into a new group of players, and just try to get to know them through Zoom and through phone calls for 6 months. So that was quite difficult, but no, really enjoying it now. We're 3 rounds into the Sligo Senior Championship, and we're currently on 6 points out of 6. So look, no, enjoying it now and looking forward to the next round. And if we can win that, we're in a county semi-final in 4 or 5 weeks' time. So look, that's the focus now, and really enjoying it.
Yeah, so just obviously to the match. Now, I was just thinking to myself there coming home from a match actually this evening that I must have read over 100 pages and counting of about this match and listened to possibly over 10 hours of podcast, and my head at the minute is just absolutely melted. I cannot call it, and there's a lot of people that know a lot more than about me than a lot more football than I do that can call it at the minute. Just as a kind of a neutral, as a student of the game, what have you made of Mayo's campaign so far this year? Obviously starting off in Division 2, heavily defeating Division 4 opposition in Sligo and Leitrim, winning the Connacht Championship, and then that famous win against Dublin. What have you made just as a neutral of the campaign so far?
It's a great campaign. It's a great campaign, but there was a lot of I suppose not negativity, but when they got relegated and after being so long in Division 1, there was certainly, I suppose, some questions asked of the group. But then the way they reacted and got to an All-Ireland final, after being relegated, I thought showed massive character from the group. And I think that was a great start going into 2021, because it just, got to an All-Ireland final, and then all of a sudden the league was starting up again, and then COVID came again and there was more lockdowns. So they had time to kind of, I suppose, look at where they were and build. And I think the 2021 campaign was ideal in Division 2 for this Mayo team. I think, they found again another 2 or 3 players. You can see amongst the group there's massive competition, and the built from the first game. And even the Connacht Championship, I suppose on paper with Sligo and Leitrim, they would have fancied themselves going into both games. But again, they were very professional about the way they did it. They put up 2 massive scores and then went into Galway, which it was always going to come down to that. So, a Galway Mayo game, it doesn't matter on history or anything. It's just going to be one of those games that's just going to be a battle to the end. And I think the way Mayo handled that was brilliant. And there's no surprise we're in an All-Ireland semi-final against Dublin.
Yeah, and what do you make of the way we kind of approached that game against Dublin? It seemed like to a lot of people that we were really intent on not conceding a goal early on, and you can see the logic in that, given the history that we have of conceding early goals. But just as a kind of a manager and a coach, what do you make of the way that we kind of approached that game, the way we went about it?
Yeah, look, I'm all up for adapting, and I spoke, with different people throughout the week. Like, what this Mayo team can do, they can adapt very fast to what's in front of them. Obviously, not conceding a goal was a massive. It was a massive thing for the group because of what's happened in the past, especially conceding early goals in big games. So I think building on that going into the second half with the players that came in, There was a real energy, but obviously they didn't want to start the way they started. It was a very poor first half of football. I don't think it was planned exactly like that. Nothing is planned like that in football because games will take a life of their own. But I just think the way they came out in the second half with real intent, they had nothing to lose. They played like a group that had nothing to lose, and I think that little bit of freedom, just allow lads to throw off the shackles and just go for it. And when they went for it, wow, what a performance, and one of the best half of football from any Mayo team in recent history. So look, well deserved, and definitely deserve to be where they are now.
Yeah, just to bring you in, Rory, obviously you've worked as a performance analyst with the team in the past. Are you as having a tougher job calling this game and trying to visualize how it's going to play out as I and many others are?
Well, like it's a strange one because the teams are just so evenly matched, and that's why it's just so hard to call. Like when I think about the game, like my heart always says Mayo, but you just try and remove the emotion from it. Just try and be as objective as you can. But I just find this game impossible to call as well. They both have great keepers. 2-8 are very well matched. I think I think man for man, I might shade it with Mayo, but like Tyrone might have a better bench, so there's just absolutely nothing between these two teams. The thing that might shade it for me, I think, is big game experience, both on the pitch and on the sideline. I think we've got a lot of experience on the pitch in the last 10 years in very big games, and I think James has been involved in very big games as well. So I think that might be the difference between the two teams, but trying to call it is so tough, and anybody who is putting themselves out there and calling it definitively is a bullshitter, because you just can't. This is a total 50-50 game. So hopefully we'll just be on the right side of the result at the end,
Yeah, what do you make of that, Kevin? Like, obviously, when you came into Ballintubber, you took charge of a team that already had a lot of really experienced campaigners in it that had been in county finals before. How much is that going to stand to Mayo the next day?
Oh, experience is massive. Even the younger Mayo players now has been exposed to massive games. A lot of like the Tommy Conroys and Ryan O'Donoghue's, they've all played now in an All Ireland final already. So no, that experience is massive. But Tyrone won't have any fear now. They're going to come up, and they've two absolutely top class managers. Brian Dewar himself, has won All Irelands, and they know what's required to win at the highest level. That's another element. While Mayo may not have that same experience in their camp. But saying all this, no, I think it's just going to be a massive battle. I think it's going to be brilliant. It's going to be intriguing, as Rory said. I think it's going to be so close, so hard to call. Both teams bring a real high energy running game, and they do live a lot off turnovers, so it's going to be trying to, not give away the ball. Both teams are going to be very cautious on making sure that they don't give away the ball because of the pace of both teams. That counter-attack style from Mayo and Tyrone is just lethal. So it's going to be quite intriguing. Really looking forward to it, but I still I'm gonna throw it out my head. I'm going to pick Mayo on this one. I think they have something special this year. I think they're just they just seem to be, doing the right things. They've beaten the All Ireland, 5 in a row or 6 in a row champions. And no, look, I think this Mayo team, I think this could be their year.
Great. Well, glad we got that out of the way. Well, just to bring it back to yourself for a second, Rory, obviously when we saw Kieran and James and obviously the other James Horn at the game, watching Tyrone versus Kerry, in your experience in doing video analysis and breaking down statistics, what do you think, watching back that game over and over again a couple of times, they'll have been watching out for when they're having obviously prepping sessions and that kind of thing over the past couple of weeks?
Well, that game, that Kerry Tyrone game is extremely hard to analyse, because it probably railed against a lot of how we think traditionally about the game, So I think when they sit down to analyse it, they'll be very surprised at some of the stats. Like Tyrone conceded all Kerry kickouts, and they hardly even contested them. Now that's really unusual. Like Kerry won 100% of their own kickout, really, really unusual that they didn't win the game getting so much primary possession from their kick out, right? The crucial thing for me is Tyrone scoring 2-9 off Kerry turnovers, right? So they didn't depend on the primary possession for the kick out, but they wanted to turn them over, hit them on the counter attack, and they got 2-9 off it. Now, I think James is going to notice that. I think the analysis team is going to notice that. So I think they're going to try and limit the mistakes the next day, right? Because Tyrone really feed off turnovers and mistakes. And they'll look at like trying to control possession and being really, really patient on the ball. Other things like is from like just analyzing the game and just looking at stats, like it's just getting the matchups right. But there's things in there that you mightn't have noticed, like that McGeary there in the backs. He got on 40 possessions coming out of defence for Tyrone in the Tyrone position, in the Tyrone transition. Now, to put that into context, you might get a midfielder that could get into 30 possessions in a game. He got on 40 in the Tyrone transition. So I think a player like that is a heartbeat of the team, and they'd be looking to definitely limit their impact. So if you're analysing the game and looking at the numbers, they're just some of the things off the top of my head that I had noticed that was very unusual about them,
I will come back to that in a second. I just want to talk a bit about the preparation. Obviously, Tyrone would have caught many by surprise, particularly the fact that they lost so heavily to Kerry earlier on in the year and they were struck down with COVID. But like, make no mistake, that was an enormous win for Tyrone. Like, that was essentially their first win really over Kerry since 2008, really, truth be told, in any kind of meaningful way. And it was a real monkey off their back. And Kevin, obviously, if cast your mind back to a couple of years ago, we brought Castlebar Mitchells to extra time twice in that famous year in 2018, I believe it was. And when we all came down back to earth, we realised that we only had a week to prepare for a county final. So how do you contrast Mayo having 4 weeks to prepare for this game and Tyrone having 2, but obviously having massive momentum from that Kerry win?
Yeah, again, we'll probably find out 5-10 minutes into the game, and sometimes you can overanalyze the break. But I think this will suit me. I think 4 weeks is fine. I think, the most important thing is trying to get your bodies back and trying to get the heads back on the ground. And Mayo would have done that within the first 2 weeks. They would have probably had most lads all back training fully after the first or second week, which gives, over 2 weeks to really, open up the competition to the whole group, because that's what it is. It's a competitive environment in that Mayo camp at the moment, and it's going to be a very hard team to pick. And the likes of now, see Oisin Mullen, very possibly will be back for the weekend. So players like that has had time now to recover. So I think the 4 weeks from Mayo won't in any way bother them. The 2 weeks for Tyrone, obviously they're coming from a high, but they had a big break before that. They hadn't played for 5 weeks before that, I think. And then you had the COVID situation and all that up in Tyrone. So that didn't seem to affect them playing against Kerry. Although I thought the first 5 minutes when Kerry came out, I thought Kerry had real intent. I thought Tyrone struggled for the first 5 or 10 minutes. And it was only when Tyrone settled, their game plan started coming into play. But, I think against Mayo, Tyrone will be a little bit more settled earlier on. But, no, I don't think the 4 week break should affect Mayo. I think it's actually going to be a good thing for them.
Yeah, we'll go back to the game in general in a second. We just want to talk about, obviously, Ballintubber men and probably the most high profile of them all, Cillian O'Connor. Look, guys, we both know, obviously he's going to be an enormous loss. He's highly unlikely to play any part in the final. But Kevin first and then Rory, what have you made of how Mayo have adapted to kind of life without Cillian O'Connor over the past couple of months?
Well, I suppose my own experience with Cillian's a leader. He's a leader on and off the pitch, and I think that's just obvious from a Ballintubber point of view, from a Mayo point of view. He's just he's got a fantastic attitude, and any coach that works with Cillian wants him on the pitch because of what he brings. But saying that, I think this group of Mayo players, I think competition is high, and what James has done is he's created a full, it's about the 35, 36 on the group. It's not about one player. That's very obvious the way he manages. And I think having Killian still involved, I've no doubt he's still around the backroom set up. I guarantee you he's at training every Tuesday, Friday, Sunday, and he's encouraging these lads, he's guiding these lads, the Tommy Conroy's and Ryan Donoghue's, and I can guarantee you Killian's in those boys' ears, sharing his own knowledge. And I think having him around the setup is just massive. Even if he's not playing, I think he's just an inspiration for those guys. And yeah, look, I think they've managed really well. But this is a big test. This is going to be a massive test how those younger players get on against this Tyrone defence, because these boys are going to be dogged. I think they're going to try to bully Mayo. I think they're going to be, trying to bring them, they're going to try to slow Mayo up at stages. So how the Tommy Conroy's react and Ryan Donoghue's and that type of player that is, they're still very young. How they react to all that will be interesting. But no, Killian's in the background, no doubt, and he's sharing plenty of knowledge. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, and I'd go and echo a lot of what Kevin said there. I think in Killian's absence, it just allows someone else to step up. I don't think they would change too much fundamentally about their game and the way they attack and the way they defend. It's just the focal point has just moved to someone else. Like we've seen, great performances from Tommy Conroy and Ryan O'Donoghue there in recent games. So those guys have stepped up to the plate, but I think, Mayo haven't necessarily changed anything or adapted anything that different. I think at that level, when a player like Killian gets injured, I don't think James would want to dwell on it for too long at all. I think if you do, it's just dead. It's just like dead wood that could sink a ship. You just have to cut away and move on as quickly as you can, and it just allows other people to stand up to the plate. And I think James would have encouraged that, and I think he believes in a lot of his young players were able to do that. That said, I think Killian's loss is yet to be understood. I think in tight games against an opposition like Tyrone, where it's crazy intensity, you just want him on the pitch. You want him winning the vital frees and getting those clutch scores and to get you over the line. So it could have a big bearing on the final, which is something that I've been thinking about. But we just have yet to see. Hopefully it won't, but I think his loss is yet to be understood.
Yeah, it's interesting. Cora Staunton, when she spoke to me earlier on today, actually made that exact point that we literally, when it comes down to a tight game, that it's then that we'll find out how valuable he was, because he has kicked those scores for us in the past. And just looking at the way kind of Kerry almost kind of played into Tyrone's hands by soling the ball like mad up the field, as you were saying, Tyrone just loved turnovers. And it almost seemed to play into their hands. Kevin, how do you think we avoid kind of giving Tyrone almost what they want the next day? How do we have to adapt our game?
Well, I think first of all it comes from the kickouts. I think what Rob will bring the next day, he has a mixed kind of kickout ranges as well. He'll be able to pick out short kickouts and long kickouts. So I think the kickout element the next day is going to be massive. I also think that Mayo, their running game, it's just about they won't get as much space as they might have got maybe against a Kerry team, because if they were planning for a Kerry team, it would have been a different type of game. But I think they're going to have to just be patient, and they have to be more patient than maybe they would have been in previous games. So I suppose that patience will be a massive element of the next day, and I think that will be the key. I think they'll have to really adapt to that, and not give away silly ball or make wrong decisions in their in scoring opportunities.
Yeah, I totally agree with that thing, just being patient in possession, and just looking for the gaps and attacking at the right time. This is going to be a very tense, enthralling game. To the likes of us, it'll be really, really tense and enthralling. I think outsiders and neutrals might see this game and think it could be one of the worst All-Ireland finals on record. It's probably going to be low scoring, but we don't really care. I mean, 2-1 will do us, just so long as we win. But you're asking there, I guess, how Mayo will have adapted from the Dublin game, and I think they're going to. I think when you look at Mayo games against opposition since 2014, I'd say, I guess when James was last in charge, I think they developed a style where they're able to adapt to their opposition in a short space of time. And what I mean by that is Mayo will often mirror the way the team is playing in front of them. If you look back at, I think it was the 2016 quarterfinal against Tyrone, that's exactly what Mayo did. Play defensive, increase the work rate, especially around the middle third and defensive third for turnovers, and to hit them on the counter, right? We were way more patient in possession, and we kept the ball at crucial stages in that game. And we eventually just got over the line, and we were able to adapt quickly against a Tyrone. Against a Dublin, Mayo can play more open, expansive football when the game allows it. So I think against Tyrone on Saturday, I'm hoping to see us revert back, be more defensive, be more dogged, hunting packs, and just kind of out Tyrone. And I just expect that switch in tactics from what we saw in the Dublin game.
Yeah, and obviously the two of you have worked intimately with our four county panelists. Killian, we know, is out of contention. Doc is nailed down to start. But given the kind of game that we're all expecting, is there a case to be made, Kevin, do you think, to start Brian Welch?
Oh, absolutely. Brian has really grown into the role in the last couple of years, and Brian's a special talent. There's a gap now there for a lot of players that, when you come out of minor and under 20, you're not all ready to go straight into senior. And, now Brian's at the perfect age. He's built on his S&C, and he's done an awful lot of work throughout the last couple of years on his condition. And you can see, he's well capable. He's a very natural talent. He's a link player as well, which is very important. I think the next day, I think you need that type of player, and he's very intelligent, with his decision making. He doesn't make many wrong decisions, Brian, but he's a workhorse. He'll be up and down that pitch all day long. He'll give you just a lot of options. And no, definitely my own experience with Brian, I think definitely he's good enough to be starting, and there's no doubt about that.
What do you think, Rory?
In fact, I think he's going to start. I could see him maybe start ahead of Darren McHale the next day. Even though he is making a great impact off the bench, especially as teams are tiring, and when Mayo need a lift, and having fresh legs, kind of, linking the play, as Kevin said, especially around that middle third when Mayo are in possession, it's just vital. But I think it's a game where Brian could start. He's very good at just carrying the ball, punching holes. He's very creative, a great passer of the ball, unselfish, and he's able to take a score. He might be that type of guy who could find himself in a pocket for a score. I think he's got a great chance of starting. If he doesn't start, we're definitely going to see him at some stage,
Yeah, Kevin, I'd like, just as we're bringing this to a close, I'd like you to weigh in on probably one of the most contentious debates in Mayo football. Where should we play Aidan O'Shea?
It's hard to know. I suppose we would have played, with Ballintubber. We played Brafey a couple of times there in the first year in 2018 in the first round of the championship and in the final. And I suppose Aidan, he can play around the middle and he can play full forward. And I think what's going to happen is you're going to see Aidan in those both positions throughout the day. As I said, Mayo likes a running game. If they like that running game, what is the point of having an Aidan O'Shea in on the edge of the square? Because if the ball's not going into him, so the next day you'll see him in and out of there. But when he's in there, it's very important that the ball is getting into him and the right ball is hit into him, and that's sometimes not done. It's one thing having him in there, but if the right ball isn't going in, it can be very disheartening for players. So no, I see Aidan playing in different roles. I don't think he's going to be just on the edge of square for the full 70 minutes, and he certainly won't be on midfield for the full 70 minutes, but around centre forward. He's versatile. he's probably one of the best tacklers in Mayo club football and in the county. So he brings a massive energy. He's a leader as well for that team. But no, you'll see Aidan in probably 2 or 3 different roles the next day.
And Kevin, obviously, just to bring it to a close, you're obviously already back in Mayo. But Rory, just a very simple question: are we going to win on Saturday? First of all, what's your head telling you, and secondly, what's your heart telling you?
Well, my heart is definitely saying Mayo, as I said in the past, but you have to just remove emotion from it. And as I said, I think the experience on the pitch and the experience on the line might be enough to get us through. So I'm going to say both are Mayo right now, but I'll probably swing in the other direction if a few times between now and throw in the next day.
Well, look, the sooner they throw in the ball, the better at this stage. But listen, thanks, lads. It's been great catching up, and no doubt we could go on for another hour talking about all the different angles and everything. But listen, it's been a good discussion, and hopefully come Sunday morning we'll have our chests out and our heads up. So thanks again. I'll talk to you in the meantime, and up Mayo.